The Miami Heat are coming off the best record in the NBA Eastern Conference and were very, very close to making it to the NBA Finals this year. But should they trade for Kevin Durant is the big question of this video. Of course, Kevin Durant, to cement his legacy, requested a trade to the two number one seeds in the NBA. The Heat already have Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. So that is a very, very nice big three. But if they go out, of course, Kevin Durant, a generational type player, if you can go out and trade for him, get him in Miami for the next 3 years, how many championships do you win? I'd say at least one or two. Before we get started, though, make sure to like button and subscribe button if you do enjoy at any point. Also, leave me a comment down below, as it would really help us out in the YouTube algorithm. And also, go ahead and get started looking at who they have re-signed this offseason, starting off with Caleb Martin, who has turned into a really, really nice 3-and-D wing role player for them. They re-signed him to a 3-year, $20 million deal. Now they also bring back Dwayne Dedmon to shore up those backup center minutes behind Bam Adebayo. And then Victor Oladipo, actually, kind of surprisingly, came back to Miami. People were thinking that he was going to be gone. But these are three moves that help their bench out, because if they do go out and trade for Kevin Durant, their depth would be lacking severely. So getting these three guys back, that really helps shore up that bench unit, especially Oladipo, because he was showing some flashes last year in the playoffs. Of course, a bit inefficient, but he was showing some flashes of starting to get back to that superstar Victor Oladipo that we saw in Indiana. Now, let's take a look at the assets they would have to deal away in any sort of Kevin Durant trade. Bam Adebayo is obviously the big one here, and Miami has said, look, we don't want to get rid of Bam Adebayo. Apparently, Miami has been the strongest suitor for Kevin Durant, but Bam Adebayo has not really been brought up in any of the discussions. Whole sequence set out for him later in this video, though. Tyler Herro is another big one. Averaged about 20 points per game this year off the bench, so definitely a very, very enticing piece that the Nets would have to consider. Nikola Jovic, their first-round pick this year, definitely has a lot of potential at 6'10" and can do a little bit of everything with the basketball. And then Duncan Robinson, guy who kind of started picking up some DNPs towards the end of the year this year for the Heat. He would basically be in there to help with the salaries because he is making like $18 million a year. Now, taking a look at their draft capital, they do have, the majority of their picks. They don't have any picks in 2025, but they have their first in 2023, 2024, 2026, 2027, 2028, all the way down to 2029. So they have a lot of first-round picks. Not too many second-round picks, but I don't think a second-round pick is really going to, tip the balance in a potential Kevin Durant trade. The Nets are probably going to want 3 or 4, maybe 5 first-round picks. We saw how much it took to get Rudy Gobert away from the Utah Jazz, as the Jazz completely fleeced that deal with the Timberwolves. Now, the big question for today, can they keep Bam Adebayo? Now, as I said earlier, the Miami Heat are very, very reluctant to throw in a Bam Adebayo in a Kevin Durant trade. Averaged 19 points, 10 rebounds, 3.4 assists as their main center this season. And obviously, Bam, very, very young, great defender. Give me those. 1.4 steals, 0.8 blocks, shot at 56% from the field this season. He's a really, really good young player. Of course, you would probably have to throw in either Tyler Herro or Bam Adebayo, maybe both in a Kevin Durant trade, but for now, we're going to see if they can keep Bam out of trade discussions. Because, he's a huge part of that Miami culture, of that Miami team that just went on an Eastern Conference Finals run. Now, let's take a look at the trade package. Obviously, Tyler Herro here, he's the big piece to this trade. Averaged 20 points per game off the bench. He would come in and probably be that starting shooting guard in Brooklyn right away. Duncan Robinson, he's really just in there for cap fillers, and then he can come off the bench and knock down some threes for Brooklyn as they continue to add more three-point shooting. Even if Kevin Durant is gone. Nikola Jovic, as we talked about earlier, a lot of potential at 6'10", with what he can do with the basketball in his hands. And then probably 2 or 3 first-round picks and then a couple of pick swaps, because obviously you're not giving as much return in player value, so you have to give a crap ton of picks. Now, looking at the Kevin Durant lineup, It's a really, really good lineup. I feel like this team could probably beat the Warriors. Maybe not. But it's definitely coming out of the East with Kyle Lowry at the point guard position, Max Strus at the 2, Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler at the 3, Kevin Durant at the 4, Bam Adebayo at the 5. You do lack some size, especially defensively, because Kevin Durant not the greatest defender, and at 6'11", like 230, he's not the strongest guy in the world. Bam a bit undersized for center, so maybe you make a move to bring in like a 7-footer, 7'1" type guy to come off the bench. But this is a really, really solid starting lineup right here, especially if Kyle Lowry can get back to Toronto. Kyle Lowry. Now, the bench. This is, where they struggle a bit. It's not the greatest unit in the world, but Gabe Vincent and Victor Oladipo, that's a solid backcourt bench, especially, like I said earlier, if Victor Oladipo can get back anywhere close to those Indiana days where he was just balling out all-star before the injury. Gabe Vincent, of course, we saw him play really, really well in the playoffs last year with the during the Kyle Lowry injury, and then Caleb Martin, who you just re-signed at the backup 3, Markieff Morris and Dwayne Dedmon at the backup 4 and 5, so a couple of old men there coming off the bench. Of course, you'd have Haslam too, but he's probably not going to play. Now the Nets, with that, if they accepted that trade, would be Kyrie at the point guard position, Tyler Herro at the 2, Joe Harris at the 3, Ben Simmons at the 4, Nick Claxton at the 5. Of course, without Kevin Durant, this team is nowhere near as good. So that's why I really think that the Nets are not going to trade Kevin Durant or Kyrie. I think they're going to give him one more year, especially with Ben Simmons, because of his ability to defend. He's in the perfect situation, in my opinion. He won't have to take any big-time shots. He can just play defense and facilitate to 2 of the greatest scorers we have ever seen. They really could have used Ben in that Celtics series. Now, my final thoughts. Like I said, I don't think the Nets do make this trade. If the Heat can make this trade, I feel like they become instant contenders, although their bench is very lacking, so maybe they make a couple of other moves. Without Bam Adebayo included in the trade proposal, I think the Nets decline, and I think the Heat are not willing to give up Bam, especially if they also have to give up Tyler Herro. I just think that's not going to happen. You'd also probably have to part ways with most of these picks, which would be rough for the Miami Heat. Speaking of rough, there is a rough contract here in Duncan Robinson, and I think the only reason they haven't traded him away, as he averaged 11 points, 2.6 rebounds, and 1.6 assists last night, the only reason they haven't traded him away is they're going to use his contract, or try to use his contract, in a much bigger trade, because he's the only player they have on the roster that's not either on a rookie deal or a max deal. So he's going to be that salary filler, as he shot at 40% from the field, 37% from 3, not the greatest percentages, and not very good defense last year. So, he's getting paid, but he's not playing too much. With that being said, that's going to be it for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on if the Heat should trade for Kevin Durant. Make sure to like button and subscribe button if you did enjoy at any point, and make sure to leave me comments down in the comment section. Like I said, with all that being said, thanks so much for watching today's video.